I never thought I'd be posting here, but here we are. My name's Daniel, 34, and I've been married for 6 years. My wife, Clara, is 31. She's smart, creative, and, until recently, the most stable part of my chaotic life. Or so I thought. About 4 months ago, Clara told me she wanted to learn English properly. We're from the Netherlands, and while both of us speak English decently, she said she wanted to improve her pronunciation for work. Totally reasonable, right? She found a private tutor online, apparently some retired art professor who also taught language lessons. His name? Vincent. Yeah, Vincent. That alone didn't bother me. I even joked about it, said something like, "What? You learning from Van Gogh himself?" We both laughed. I didn't think much of it then. But here's where it started getting weird. Clara began dressing up for lessons. Full makeup, styled hair, nice perfume. The kind she'd usually save for nights out. I teased her about it, and she said, "It helps me focus if I feel confident." Fair enough. Then the lessons started taking longer. What used to be an hour on Zoom somehow stretched to 2, sometimes even 3. Once, I came home early and heard laughter through her closed office door. Not like polite laughter, like that breathless, intimate kind. When I asked her later how the lesson went, she said, "It's going great. He says I'm improving fast." But something in her tone felt off. I started noticing small things, changes in her phone habits, the way she locked the screen when I walked by, the way she started saying, "Vincent says this," or "Vincent thinks that." It was subtle at first, but it grew into something I couldn't ignore. I told myself I was being paranoid, that she was just excited about learning. But in my gut, something didn't sit right. That's when I decided to find out who this Vincent really was. So yeah, I decided to do a little digging. Not in a controlling way, at least that's what I told myself. But because my gut wouldn't let it go. Clara had mentioned that Vincent lived in France, which already made me curious. Why would a Dutch woman take English lessons from someone in France? She said he was a retired artist who studied in Alls, which made me laugh the first time she said it, because that's literally where Van Gogh lived. But this time, I wasn't laughing. I checked our shared bank account and saw a few small transactions labeled Arla Sculpture. Payments every week, around €80 each. I Googled the name. It wasn't a tutoring company. It was a subscription service for a digital art mentorship and language exchange program. Weird. So I clicked through to the website. It was full of surreal artwork, half English, half French captions, and a gallery titled Letters to Clara. My heart literally skipped when I saw that name. I clicked, and there it was. Paintings, actual oil paintings, uploaded to the site, all signed Vincent. But the subjects? The same brown hair, same green eyes, same freckled nose. All her. The captions were unsettling. Stuff like, "She speaks like a melody I can't translate. Her words drip like sunlight on canvas. I wish to teach her a language without sound." I felt sick. I scrolled through image after image, and every one felt more intimate than the last. The final one stopped me cold. It was titled Lesson 17 when she said my name. And there she was, nude from the back, painted with unreal tenderness, her hair cascading over her shoulders. I don't even remember closing the tab. My hands were shaking. I just sat there in the dark, trying to convince myself it wasn't her, that maybe it was coincidence. But my mind was already spinning. That night, Clara told me she was meeting Vincent online for an advanced session. I just said, "Sure," pretending like nothing was wrong. But my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. That's when I decided I needed proof. I waited until her next lesson. She went into the office, closed the door, and put her headphones on. I waited a few minutes, then quietly opened the living room laptop, our shared one, and logged into the router admin page. Yeah, I know, total spy move, but I needed to know who she was really talking to. I copied the IP address from the live connection and did a quick lookup. It wasn't from France. It was from Leiden, literally 40 minutes away from us. So Vincent from Alls was actually Vincent from down the damn highway. Something snapped in me. I walked to the office, opened the door mid-session. She jumped. He, on screen, looked stunned. Long hair, unshaven, maybe in his late 40s, surrounded by canvases. He said, "Oh, Clara, who is before she closed the laptop so hard it almost broke. What the hell was that? I asked. Her face went pale. It's not what it looks like, Daniel. I said, really? Because it looks like you're posing for paintings behind my back. She froze. You saw them? That confirmed everything. I didn't even need to answer. She started talking fast, like she was trying to get ahead of the truth. He's an artist. He asked me to model, just for inspiration. It's art, not whatever you think it is. I never touched him. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But the lies were stacked too high. So, you let a guy paint you naked online, and somehow that's not cheating? She started crying, saying it wasn't like that she felt seen and understood by him in a way she couldn't explain, that he helped her express herself. I just stood there, numb. I'd always been the supportive husband, the one cheering her on in everything she tried. And now she was telling me another man, an internet stranger, was the one who understood her. When she realized I wasn't yelling, she tried to hold my hand. I pulled back. That moment, that silence, it felt heavier than any argument we ever had. All I could say was, I want you to leave for the night. She did. Without another word. I sat on the couch for hours afterward, staring at the dark TV screen, feeling like someone had peeled the floor out from under my life. She spent that night at her sister's place. I didn't text her, didn't call, didn't even touch my phone. I just sat there in the dark, trying to process how something as harmless as learning English turned into emotional infidelity, or whatever this mess was supposed to be. The next morning, I woke up to 6 unread messages from her. I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me. It wasn't physical. I just needed something for myself. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we talk? I didn't reply. I got up, made coffee, and looked at her empty mug next to mine. It hit me hard. This tiny, ordinary thing suddenly felt like a gravestone for our marriage. That afternoon, she came home while I was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept. She started crying before she even sat down. I ended it, she said. With him. I blocked everything. I didn't say anything. She kept going. I know I broke your trust, but he made me feel alive again, like I wasn't just existing. That one hurt more than anything else. Because deep down, I knew what she meant. We'd both been coasting lately. Work, bills, routines, it all blurred together. But the difference was, I didn't go looking for someone else to make me feel alive. When I finally spoke, my voice was quieter than I expected. Did you ever love me? She nodded immediately, crying harder. I still do. I just got lost. The way she said it, broken, honest, almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. But then she added, he told me he saw something in me that you didn't. That line, I swear it was like being stabbed in the chest. I couldn't even look at her anymore. I told her I needed space. Real space. I asked her to stay with her sister for a while. She agreed, left quietly, and closed the door behind her. And for the first time in years, the house was completely silent. That night, I opened a blank document on my laptop. I didn't know what I was going to write. Maybe a letter, maybe a journal. But the title I typed said, When She Said His Name. And somehow, writing those words felt like the first breath after drowning. The days after she left were a blur. You know, that strange mix of relief and heartbreak that makes you feel both lighter and completely hollow? That was me. I went to work, but I was useless. I'd catch myself staring at my computer screen, just gone. My coworkers probably thought I was sick. In a way, I was. Heartsick, I guess. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of her. The half-finished mug of tea in the cupboard. The hair tie on the nightstand. The paintbrush she'd bought for her lessons. I'd lie awake at night wondering when it all started slipping. Was it me? Did I stop paying attention? Did I make her feel unseen? Or was it just that she wanted something I could never be? Someone more poetic, more mysterious, more like her so-called Vincent. I started spiraling. I looked him up again, even though I promised myself I wouldn't. The website was gone, taken down, probably after she blocked him, but his name led to another art blog. Same style, same strokes. One of the posts said, "Some people are not meant to be kept. They're meant to be painted." That line broke me, because that's what she'd become to him. A muse, not a person. And I was just the background, the dull beige wall behind their masterpiece. I tried talking to friends, but nobody really knew what to say. Most just told me, At least it wasn't physical. But emotional cheating is physical in its own way. It gets into your bones. It changes how you see yourself, how you trust, how you even breathe around another person. One night, I opened the folder where I'd started that document. When she said his name, I wrote for hours. About the first time we met. The first time she said she loved me. The first time she lied. By 3 a.m., I realized I wasn't writing to her anymore. I was writing to myself, trying to build some kind of understanding out of the wreckage. That was the night I decided I couldn't keep waiting for her to come back. Something inside me had already started moving on, even if the rest of me didn't know it yet. 2 weeks passed before I saw her again. She texted that she wanted to talk in person, and even though my stomach twisted reading that, I agreed. Closure, I told myself. That's all this would be. She came over one rainy Thursday evening. I still remember the smell of wet pavement on her coat when she stepped inside. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of everything had shrunk her. We sat at the kitchen table, same spot where she'd confessed everything. Only this time, she was quieter. No tears, no excuses. Just tired. I've been thinking a lot, she said. About what I did. About why I did it. I didn't say anything. Just nodded, waiting. She took a deep breath. I thought I wanted someone like him. Someone who made me feel special. But the truth is, I was just running away from feeling ordinary. You didn't make me invisible, Daniel. I made myself that way. That hit differently. It wasn't an apology that fixed anything, but it was honest. And I think that was the first honest thing she'd said in months. Then she said something I didn't expect. He's gone. Deleted everything. I think he does this with women all over Europe. Makes them feel like muses, then disappears when they start feeling real. I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Anger? Pity? All of it, probably. She reached across the table, her fingers trembling. I want to try again. Therapy, whatever it takes. Please. And here's the thing. I didn't answer right away. A month earlier, I'd have said yes without thinking. But now, I didn't know if there was anything left to rebuild. I don't know, Clara, I said finally. I can forgive you, but I don't think I can unsee it. She cried quietly, then nodded. I understand. We sat there for a while, listening to the rain hitting the windows. And for the first time since it all started, I didn't feel anger. Just sadness, and a strange kind of peace. When she left, she kissed me on the cheek and said, "You were always enough." I just wasn't. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. A few days after that conversation, I came home from work and found an envelope on the doorstep. No name on it, just a small sunflower doodle in the corner. It was from her. Inside was a handwritten letter, maybe 5 pages long. I almost didn't read it, but something about that little drawing made me sit down and open it anyway. It started simply, "Dear Daniel, you don't owe me forgiveness, but you deserve an explanation." She wrote about how she'd been feeling stuck, how every day felt like living the same scene over and over, and how this Vincent had made her feel like she was part of something meaningful again. "He spoke in metaphors," she wrote, "and I mistook them for love." That line broke me a little, because I'd spent so long blaming myself, thinking maybe if I'd been more romantic, more spontaneous, more anything, she wouldn't have looked elsewhere. But reading her words, I realized it wasn't about me. It was about her need to be seen by someone, even if it meant losing everything real. Then came the part that made my hands shake. He told me I reminded him of the woman in Van Gogh's last letters, the one he never truly reached. He said art lives in longing. I believed him until I realized he didn't love me. He loved my absence. That's when I understood what kind of man this Vincent was. A collector of emotions, not people. He wanted muses, not partners. She ended the letter with, "I'll always be sorry, but I hope someday you'll see me as a chapter, not the whole story." I folded the pages carefully, put them back in the envelope, and slid it into a drawer. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because I wasn't ready to destroy it either. That night, I took a long walk through the city, passed by art galleries, couples holding hands, the faint sound of rain starting again. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I just felt human. And strangely, I found comfort in that. About a week after the letter, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line just said, "I'm sorry." At first, I almost deleted it, thought it was spam. But then I saw the name in the signature. Vincent. My stomach dropped. The email started like this. Daniel, I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know I'm not the monster you probably think I am. He went on about how Clara had inspired him, how he'd never meant for things to go that far, and how art and emotion sometimes get tangled. I could feel my pulse in my neck as I read it. This guy was explaining emotional betrayal like it was a brushstroke. Then he wrote something that made my blood run cold. She was the first to reach out to me after seeing my paintings online. She said she wanted to learn English, but what she really wanted was to be seen. I pushed my chair back and just sat there staring at the screen. Because that, right there, was a lie. She told me he found her. I kept reading. She told me you were distant, that you didn't notice her anymore. I thought I was helping her find herself again. I was wrong. I used her for my work. At least he admitted that. But then came the twist. He attached a photo. Not of her, but of himself, standing in front of a new painting. And in that painting was me. Not a perfect likeness, but the resemblance was unmistakable. The posture, the beard, even the old leather jacket I wore all the time. The title under it read, The Husband Who Waited. I just sat there numb. He had turned me into a painting now. There was no anger left, just this hollow sadness, like realizing the story had swallowed all three of us whole, and none of us came out clean. I didn't reply to him. I didn't even show Clara the email. I just dragged it into a folder I called Unfinished Canvases, because that's what it all felt like, unfinished. After that email, something inside me changed. It wasn't rage anymore. It was exhaustion, a deep, bone-heavy kind that made me realize I couldn't keep living inside this loop of pain and curiosity. I sat at my desk staring at the folder labeled Unfinished Canvases. Inside were her letter, screenshots of the paintings, and that photo of his last piece, the one of me. It felt like holding the ashes of something that used to be beautiful. That's when I made my choice. I emailed Clara and asked to meet one last time. Not to argue, not to rehash everything, just to end it properly. We met at a small cafe near the park where we'd had our first date. She looked nervous, clutching her tea like it was holding her together. I got an email from him, I said. Her eyes widened. What? What did he say? Doesn't matter, I said. He's just another artist chasing ghosts. But it made me realize something. She waited. I can't keep holding on to this. To you. To what happened. To any of it. I forgave you already, but forgiveness doesn't mean we can go back. Her face crumpled, and for a second, I almost wanted to take it back. But I couldn't. It wasn't anger talking, it was truth. She nodded slowly. So that's it. I said, yeah, that's it. We sat in silence for a while. She eventually smiled, the kind of fragile smile people wear when they know it's the last time. Before she left, she reached into her purse and handed me something small, an old keychain with a tiny paintbrush on it. For your next chapter, she said. After she walked away, I just sat there, staring at that keychain. I realized how weirdly fitting it was. She'd found her escape in art. And maybe now, it was my turn to create something of my own, not paintings, but a life that didn't orbit around someone else's chaos. That night, I deleted the folder. Everything gone. I didn't do it out of bitterness. I did it because I finally understood that healing isn't about holding on to proof. It's about letting the story end. The days after that cafe meeting were quiet, almost painfully so. The apartment felt bigger without her, and for the first few nights, I kept expecting her voice to float down the hallway, laughing or humming. It didn't happen. I threw myself into small routines. Cooking, cleaning, going for walks. Even started sketching again. Not to make art for anyone else, just for me. Lines, shapes, colors. No deeper meaning than the joy of creating something tangible. Friends started noticing changes too. I used to avoid talking about her, but now I could mention her without flinching. Not with hatred, but with a calm acknowledgement that she was part of my past, not my present. Work became a refuge. I began taking on new projects, traveling for short stints, and even signed up for a weekend language course myself. English, actually. Something about reclaiming that small part of her story felt grounding. One evening, I ran into an old neighbor in the park. We talked about everything and nothing, and she asked me how I was holding up. I surprised myself by saying, better than I expected. I feel lighter. That word, lighter, stuck. Because for months, I carried this weight of betrayal, of confusion, of watching someone I loved slip away. And now, step by step, day by day, that weight was lifting. I even started dating again. Small, cautious steps. Coffee dates, museum visits, conversations that weren't loaded with suspicion or dread. It was awkward, sometimes clumsy, but it was mine. And that felt revolutionary after everything. Most nights, I still thought about Clara, not with anger, not with longing, but with a sort of quiet curiosity. The part of me that loved her never really disappears. It just finds a place to sit quietly, not controlling the rest of my life. And slowly, the idea of us stopped defining who I was. I began to see myself as someone separate from the drama, capable of trust, capable of joy, capable of creating a life that wasn't shadowed by a digital Van Gogh. About 3 months later, I was wandering through a local art fair, sketchbook in hand, when I ran into someone completely unexpected, Vincent. Or, at least, the man who called himself Vincent. I froze for a second. He looked older, a little more worn around the edges than in his photos, but unmistakable. And he looked embarrassed. "Daniel," he said quietly, "I didn't expect to see you here." I shrugged. "Yeah, life's full of surprises." He nodded, fiddling with his hands. I just wanted to apologize in person. For everything. I studied him for a long moment. The same man who had invaded my marriage with words and paint, now standing in front of me, vulnerable. I accepted that. I said finally, "It's over. That's the point." He sighed. "I get it. But I wanted to tell you that Clara, she never told me to hurt you. I misread her. I wasn't a good person." "Noted," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't need his confession. I didn't need closure from him. I'd already found my own. Then he did something that caught me off guard. He handed me a small sketchbook. I started drawing for myself again. "Thought maybe you'd want this back." I flipped through it. Most were landscapes, some abstract, none of Clara. Just art. Innocent, quiet, harmless. I nodded. "Thanks. I'll keep it." As he walked away, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't want revenge, or answers, or even explanations. I wanted my life back, and I had it. That night, I returned home, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. After that encounter, life began to settle in ways I hadn't expected. The anger, the confusion, even the lingering sadness, they all started to fade, replaced by a quiet kind of healing. I took up more hobbies, things I'd abandoned during the chaos of the last year. Sketching, jogging, reading books I'd never finished. I even joined a small art group in town. Just casual, nothing intense. It was nice to be around creativity again, without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. I started journaling every morning, not about her, not about Vincent, but about myself. Small victories, funny moments, things that made me smile. Some days it was as trivial as a perfect cup of coffee. Other days, it was a long walk in the park where the leaves glowed like fire. But each entry felt like stitching a tiny piece of myself back together. Social life picked up too. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected, went out for dinners, laughed more than I had in months. And slowly, I started dating again. Small steps, short conversations, careful coffee dates. No one became a replacement because I realized I didn't need one. I was enough. One evening, while painting in my small studio, I paused and realized something. I didn't feel bitterness toward Clara anymore. I didn't long for what we had, didn't resent what was lost. I just understood. We were two people whose paths had crossed and then diverged in painful, unexpected ways. And that was enough. The healing didn't feel dramatic. It wasn't like flipping a switch. It was subtle, day by day. A conversation that didn't sting, a memory that didn't hurt, a small laugh that came naturally. Each step made the past feel like a story I could observe without being trapped in it. I even framed one of my own paintings in the apartment, just abstract colors swirling together. Every time I looked at it, I felt that quiet resilience. I survived. I created again. I belonged to myself first. By this point, I'd started to see everything with a clarity I didn't have during the chaos. The betrayal, the lies, the paintings, the emails. It all became a mirror for what I needed to understand about myself, about love, and about boundaries. First, I learned that emotional betrayal can hurt just as deeply as physical. People talk about cheating like it's only physical, but trust and intimacy are not confined to the bedroom. The way Clara let someone else see her soul, even if it wasn't physical, cut me in ways I hadn't expected. Second, I learned that honesty matters, but so does action. Clara's letters and confessions were honest, but they didn't erase the choices she made. Forgiveness is a gift, but it doesn't mean going back to the same pattern. Third, I realized I'd been complicit in my own disconnection. I'd stopped noticing her, stopped actively participating in the marriage in subtle ways. That didn't excuse what she did, but it made me aware that relationships need constant attention, or they risk becoming fertile ground for someone else's influence. Finally, I learned about resilience. Not the dramatic kind that makes headlines, but the quiet kind that builds slowly as you reclaim yourself. As I rebuilt my life, my hobbies, my friendships, my sense of self, I understood that I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. I even started sharing some of these lessons in casual conversations with friends, warning them about emotional intimacy outside relationships, and encouraging them to communicate when they feel unseen. Most importantly, I realized I could still love. Not Clara, not Vincent, not the idea of a perfect marriage, but love, life, art, laughter, connection. And that love was enough. By now, life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder for reminders of betrayal, and I wasn't haunted by the paintings or the emails anymore. They were memories, yes, but they no longer had power over me. I started dating more seriously, cautiously, but with honesty as my foundation. I made it clear what I valued: trust, transparency, and respect. No games. No hidden Vincent lurking somewhere. And I met someone wonderful, not a replacement for Clara, just a new chapter. Someone who made me laugh, challenged me, and inspired me in her own way. Work and art became intertwined again. I submitted a piece to a small gallery, something I'd painted during the darkest weeks, and it got accepted. Seeing people respond to my work, without it being tied to a betrayal or obsession, felt like reclaiming my voice. I even reconnected with Clara briefly, months later. No anger, no longing, just civility. We acknowledged the past, wished each other well, and moved on. No drama, no digital Van Gogh looming over our heads. Just closure. And in quiet moments, I'd reflect on the journey, from the shock of discovery, to confrontation, to heartbreak, to finally rebuilding. I realized how fragile trust can be, but also how resilient the human heart is. I began to understand that life doesn't hand out neat endings. Sometimes it hands out painful lessons, surreal experiences, and strange encounters that test everything you believe about love and loyalty. But how you respond, how you process, rebuild, and move forward, that's the real story. Here we are, the last part, and honestly, I never imagined I'd be telling this story, let alone framing it as a lesson for anyone else. But if you've read this far, maybe you'll take something from it. First, trust your gut. That little voice that tells you something isn't right? Listen to it. I brushed mine off for months, convincing myself I was overreacting. But ignoring it only prolonged the pain. Second, emotional betrayal is real. It can cut just as deeply as physical cheating. Recognize it, acknowledge it, and don't let anyone minimize your feelings. Third, forgiveness is for you, not them. I forgave Clara because holding on to anger was poisoning me. But forgiveness doesn't mean you go back. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to step forward, even when they stay behind. Fourth, reclaim your life. Art, hobbies, friends, work, whatever grounds you. For me, painting became therapy, and small steps toward independence slowly stitched me back together. And lastly, love yourself first. I learned that love isn't a zero-sum game. You can grieve, rebuild, and still love again. But the healthiest love starts with you. So here's my advice if you're in a situation like mine. Don't ignore the warning signs. Document, reflect, and process your feelings. Protect your heart, but don't shut it off completely. Take your time to rebuild. There's no rush. And never let someone else's obsession or art consume your reality. Life has a funny way of throwing surreal, almost artistic chaos at you, like my own Van Gogh moment. But the point isn't the chaos. It's how you paint the next chapter of your life. And trust me, you're the one holding the brush. So yeah, that's my story. My Vincent van Gogh chapter is closed. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like the main character in my own life again. Daniel.